a WFSB Plus original. This is the Capitol Rundown.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Capitol Rundown on WFSB Plus, where we report the politics that matter to you from both sides of the aisle. I'm Kara Sundlun, and joining me are former House Republican leader Themis Klarides and Democratic strategist Jimmy Tickey. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
All right, let's start with the Pratt strike. The Pratt and Whitney strike that we've been reporting on every day. We reported that as it happened in breaking news, that it ended yesterday with most members, about 72%, voting for it. There are some today, even though people are back at work, saying it's not that great of a deal. I'd like to ask you both what this means in a larger context, not just for those workers, but for our state as a whole. Jimmy?
Thank you. Yes, this is good news for the workers. It's good news for Pratt and Whitney, of course. These workers are the best in the world making our jet engines and for our military and for our commercial jets. Over 70% of the union workers voted to ratify this new 4-year collective bargaining agreement. Maybe not everybody agreed with it, but it was overwhelmingly passed by the workers. They were on strike for over 3 weeks. And, they wanted to get back to work. Pratt and Whitney needs them in order to do this important work for our national security, for our defense industry. And there's also so many other small and medium-sized businesses and suppliers that play into that supply chain for Pratt and Whitney. So it is good for the Connecticut economy that these men and women are back to work, working in East Hartford, Middletown, and elsewhere. And it's good for the Connecticut economy, and it's good for these workers. They saw an increase in their wages with a commitment from Pratt and Whitney to stay in Connecticut until 2029 at least, with benefits, more benefits to their pension plans. So there was a lot of details that went into the negotiating over these last 3 weeks, and I'm glad that they've now found an agreement that they have agreed to.
Yeah, I think everyone's happy the strike is over for sure, and especially the workers who are losing their health care. Themis, I want you to weigh in. I know you were worried about just Connecticut being business friendly. Today on the news, we had some workers saying that they, don't think it was enough. They lost their $5,000 signing bonus. They want to see more even still. But just curious what your take is, Themis.
Well, listen, nobody ever wants to see a strike going on, and it's not good for businesses. It's not good for the people of the state of Connecticut. And it's certainly not good for the workers. So I'm glad that they came to an agreement. And a negotiation is exactly what it is. It's, both sides should go away thinking that they got stuff and that they lost stuff. So I'm certainly glad it was beneficial to both sides in this regard. But, for me, and Jimmy mentioned it, and we mentioned it on the show before, one of their priorities, the workers' priorities, was making sure that Pratt made a commitment to stay in Connecticut for the foreseeable future. And that was one of the negotiating points that they got, Pratt agreed to stay in the state of Connecticut and not take the work and take their company to mostly southern states that are much cheaper to do business in. And that is a bigger overriding problem we're having, whether it's for union workers, whether it's for the spending cap we talk about, whether it's for a housing bill we'll talk about in a little while, is that Connecticut is not affordable to live in. And it's not affordable because of bad policies put forward by the leaders of the state for many years and put us in a place where we're losing jobs, we're losing companies. We lost GE, we lost Lego, and people can't afford to live here. And that's the bigger problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay, Themis, thank you. I want to continue with all things pocketbook, both from the federal budget and the state budget. We've got the feds and the state all talking about the budgets. Let's see where we are. Let's take a pulse right now. I know it's not all done. We've talked a lot about that the state's going to have to fill the gap of Medicaid if they lose some from the feds. It's my understanding they're at least going to do that for the people who are the poorest in our state. But where do we stand? Jimmy, let's start with you on what people can expect with both of these budgets and their own pocketbooks.
Sure. So first, the federal budget, a very bad bill, in my opinion, was passed out of Congress, out of the Republican majority House. That goes on to the Senate. We hopefully will see some changes there. There have already been some comments from Republican senators that they would want to see some changes to the very extreme bill that was passed out of the United States House of Representatives. That will have an impact to all states, but particularly here in Connecticut with the cuts that they are making to food and nutrition and Medicaid and other programs that we really do depend on. Now, they have until September to pass their budget, the federal budget. Here in Connecticut, As Themis well knows, we have 1 week left, and where the legislative session must vote on a budget. So that budget is coming into focus. There will be a lot of activity in the coming days. This is all about taking a look and making sure that we have a balanced budget before the session gavels out. We are still over $8 billion in our payments to our pension plans. We are over $4 billion in our rainy day fund. But there are some conversations about how do we invest our funds and how do we meet a balanced budget. One of those issues is the overruns that we've seen in Medicaid. And so there has been a one-time payment to that Medicaid program to make sure that we really do honor the commitments that the state has made to those on Medicaid to ensure that that program is functioning well, and the people that are on it, the vulnerable, women, the disabled, that they continue to use the Medicaid program here in Connecticut. There is going to be a lot of activity in this space in the coming days, and we certainly will keep following it as we see where we land with this state budget.
Yeah, Themis, there's a lot more, right? I think you told me like it's not even begin to be over. Most of it happens at the end, I guess.
It does. So the legislative session this year began the first week of January, and it will end next Wednesday on June 4th. And I know this sounds counterintuitive, but there will be more bills passed the last 5 days of session than there were the entire session before then. It's human nature. Things you're negotiating things, you're pushing things to the end to see if you can get leverage on certain bills and budgets and different items that you want in those budgets and those bills. So the next 5 days will be completely frenetic. And the interesting part of it is that clearly in Connecticut, the Democrats are in the majority in the House and the Senate and the state and in the governor's office. And so you would think that if you're in the majority, you have more votes than the other guy. And so you can kind of do whatever you want. But the last week of session, the minority party, the Republicans, gain a lot of control because they have one thing, they have time. Because under state statute, you must end session by midnight the first Wednesday after the first Monday in June, which is next June. So by, definitionally, if you wanted to take out a bill today and just talk for the next week straight, nothing else would happen. Now, obviously that's not going to happen, but that happens in small bunches. So, as Jimmy said, the federal budget got out of the Senate. There's a lot of negotiations to be done got out of the House, going to the Senate. So that's going to be, I think we'll see a lot of changes with the last version in the House. And on the state budget, literally every hour it's changing. And there's priorities, right? There's Medicaid, there's nonprofits who haven't seen even increases in line with inflation in decades, people that do the job better on the state level than the state does. And that's why they contract with them. So there's a lot to be done in a short amount of time.
Okay, so we're going to be watching, and of course, that'll be an important Capitol rundown to tune into after those dates. But there were some bills that came out that we've been reporting on. I just want to get your take. Themis, I'll stay with you for a moment. There's a housing bill. What do we need to understand about this?
Well, what you generally need to understand is it's a huge bill. It took 12 hours of debate to do. It started at 11 in the morning yesterday, and it didn't finish till after 11 at night. But the main problem with the housing bill that was passed is it takes away local control from our cities and towns. Now, one of the great things we all talk about, any of us who are nutmeggers who live in Connecticut, is the local nature of the state of Connecticut. We have cities, we have suburbs, we have rural areas, and you get to choose kind of where you want to live based on the nature of that town. And this bill is basically saying the state is going to decide for you how much affordable housing you need to have in your town. And then what the proponents of this bill, the Democrats in this particular case, response to that is, oh, but if you don't like what the state told you, then you can just come to us and basically appeal it. But they stop there. They don't give you the last part. After you appeal it, then the legislature is going to decide if you're right or you're wrong. Now, I will say this to you. As somebody coming from the lower Naugatuck Valley, as Jimmy does, I know that Derby, Seymour, Shelton, people in those towns should not be making decisions for what people are doing in Hartford, should not be making decisions for what people are doing in Stonington or Brooklyn, Connecticut, or Litchfield, et cetera. And I don't want them making decisions for us either. And so it is one thing to have parameters, which we already have in the state of Connecticut as far as affordable housing, but telling towns and cities, particularly when infrastructure does not cover the ability to do all this is really very irresponsible, and I think is very short-sighted on the part of the legislature that passed this.
Okay, Jimmy.
So I think, as we all have seen and experienced, just how expensive housing is in Connecticut. It's only getting more expensive, with home prices soaring, with rents continuing to be on the rise for people who might want to downsize, or for young people who would really like to move out of their parents' house and get a place of their own. It's so expensive to have housing here in Connecticut, whether you're buying or you're renting. And you hear this first and foremost from business leaders. You know, CBIA did a very extensive report around the need for more housing and for more mid-level housing in Connecticut. That's having some housing diversity, mid-level housing, affordable housing for all people, to make sure that we've got some affordability when people are looking for homes, no matter what town that they may live in Connecticut. You know, a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a plan for every town to at least provide some sort of a blueprint to get towards more affordable housing. And so what this bill does, and it is a very large bill, it does a lot of different things. It gives more support for the unhoused, whether that's a mobile shower program, laundry services to address those hygiene needs, which is good for their own dignity and good for the public health. It does give towns more tools. It gives them opportunities to work with their council of governments. In Connecticut, we don't have county government. We have councils of governments, and that allows towns to work together to access resources from the state or from their own region if they need help or want help in planning out what makes sense for their town and their region with more affordable and housing options. You know, we've got so many empty factories and light industrial buildings that have just been sitting there. Here in the Naugatuck Valley, we've got so many large brick buildings that just sit there. What can we do to re-envision what that could look like? And maybe that could be housing for young people. The bill also really emphasizes transit-oriented development. There should be housing built around the train lines, around transit-oriented development. That's smart development, so that people are living nearby. They also could walk to a train station or on a bus line as people are moving around the state and moving around the region. There's also a grant program in this that I think the towns will really like. It's a $50 million a year grant program that will be available to towns to take advantage of if they do want to look at some mid-level and affordable housing, so that it does more to add more affordable housing stock in Connecticut. People are in Connecticut. People are coming to Connecticut. We need more housing to keep up with the amount of people that are looking to live here.
Okay. All right, I want to move on to a couple bills that you might be hearing about. Perhaps you've heard that RFK Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary, isn't a big fan of fluoride in the water. I know a lot of us have grown up with that, saying, what, isn't the fluoride good for us and our teeth? I guess there's some controversy about that. And there's a bill that would make sure that fluoride stays in Connecticut water. Is that right, Themis?
Well, right now, the way Connecticut law reads is we follow the CDC and Health and Human Services guidelines in regards to fluoride being in water and how much fluoride should be in water. Nobody is arguing at this point, I mean, the legislature, at least in this regard, is arguing that we shouldn't maintain that. What they're concerned about is, because RFK Jr. has some different thoughts on how a lot of this stuff goes, they're trying to do a preemptive strike and change that so the state of Connecticut can make their own decisions. Now, the reason why Connecticut has followed the CDC and the HHS guidelines up until now is because they believe they have the most updated data, the most scientific evidence in regard to fluoride. And so that's why we have followed them. And they would like to continue to follow them, except they're worried that RFK Jr. will change that up. Now, the fact of the matter is that science, as of late, has determined that you don't need as much fluoride in your water as you needed before, but you still need fluoride in your water. You know, my point here, and a lot of people are arguing, is, listen, if he comes in and says, you don't need any fluoride in your water, and we don't agree with that, then we can change that at the time. But because everybody's so concerned about what the Trump administration is doing, and RFK Jr. and other secretaries in the national federal government, they're trying to do preemptive strikes along the way. I think we fix it if it becomes a problem. Right now, just stick with the CDC guidelines.
Okay. Jimmy, what do you think?
Well, fluoride in the water has been studied since the early 1900s. It was enacted in this country in the 1940s. There's small amounts of fluoride in our drinking water, which time and time again, the science shows reduces dental decay and improved health, particularly in children. We have seen this Secretary of Health and Human Services and others in this federal administration not believe the work that they actually were told to carry out as their positions would tell them to do. We have a secretary who does not believe in these sciences, and it is dangerous. So I'm glad that Connecticut is at least taking a look and seeing what makes the most sense for Connecticut. If the CDC or HHS were to take some drastic measures to cut back on what we know has been proven time and time again to be safe, that Connecticut will ensure that our drinking water is safe and those who drink it are kept safe. Maybe it's not at the levels that the feds say, but that we still include some level of fluoride, which talk to any scientist, talk to anyone in the medical field, and they'll tell you that these things have been proven time and time again. So we need to listen to the scientist and less of, someone who will only be a Secretary of Health and Human Services for a period of time. And so if they do change any of the federal policy around this under the Trump administration, that we in Connecticut can make the determination for ourselves to keep families safe.
All right, finally, before I let you guys go, we want to get one more thing that you might have been reading about. Dan Haar wrote about it in CT Insider. XL Center is going through a massive renovation. Perhaps it's going to be good to bring more activity, recreation, sports to downtown Hartford. But the big news was that they're going to have this sponsor. As of this taping, we don't know who it is. It's going to spend a couple $1 million a year to be the title sponsor. Insiders, you know anything? And what do you think about the XL renovations? Themis?
Well, we saw in Dan Haar's article that he was speculating as to two potential sponsors, meaning Hartford Healthcare and Cigna. I don't think, I don't think anybody really knows who it is, and I think they're going to announce it in June. But I think that's a lot of money for somebody to pay $2 million, who already has their name Hartford all over the place. But, for our purposes as residents of Connecticut, I hope they say they have somebody, and that's what we care about. I mean, nobody knew what XL was to begin with. It just sounded like there were people I knew that thought it was just an extra large center.
Yeah.
So it will be great to have a name and a company that we know and we recognize and can get more notoriety for people that come to that center to watch sporting events and concerts, et cetera, and make sure that we can build it out and make it more up to date and make it a place where people want to come.
Yeah. Jimmy, what do you think? I think there's state money involved too in the renovation, if I'm correct.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A significant amount of state funds went into really improving and renovating the center. So I don't know who the partner will be yet, but yes, it does sound like it will be coming out in the coming weeks about who it will be named with the XL Center. And it's exciting. It makes me think about all the entertainment and sports and arts and culture that we have in Connecticut. You see so many music venues from Stamford to Bridgeport, New Haven and Hartford. And I think enhancing the XL Center with a new name sponsor will be a really exciting thing for Connecticut, and what a great time for it. We're now on the other side of Memorial Day, and it's a great opportunity for people to get out there and experience the summer and summer concerts and all the entertainment and tourism that we have here in Connecticut. So we all will be waiting to hear who the partner is for the new XL Center in Hartford.
Yeah. I won't make you guys take bets right now, but maybe by the next time the Capitol Rundown airs, we'll know. But thank you both for being here. And speaking of tourism, we hope everyone has a wonderful summer. Check out ctvisit.com. I think it's bipartisan that you both agree we have a great state, and there's a lot of great places to visit, and that can help everybody who lives here. All right, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown. You can always find it on WFSB.com. Click on local news. It's right there. It's also on our WFSB News YouTube channel. I'm Kara Sundlun. Have a great afternoon.